right now. Somewhere over the horizon.
You have windows being busted out, debris being sprayed everywhere.
Another major storm is brewing.
Whole thing's going.
During the last 4 decades, we have seen more major hurricanes.
Not good. Time to take cover, time to take cover.
They're bigger and more devastating.
The scene here is awful.
What's causing them, and what do you need to know to protect your family? We bring you answers from weather experts and meet a storm chaser who offers a harrowing up-close look at the sound and fury of nature's most powerful storms. Hello, I'm Eugene Ramirez in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. It's an annual weather event as reliable as the change in seasons. Each year, around this time, hurricanes take shape in the Atlantic Basin, somewhere north of the equator, and spin their way toward the United States, bringing intense winds, drenching rains, and often catastrophic destruction. This year, for the 7th straight time, meteorologists are predicting an above-average season. 19 named storms, 5 more than normal. Now, of those, 9 are expected to become hurricanes, 4 major, which means winds exceeding 111 miles per hour. When this hurricane season is over, forecasters predict it will have been as intense as last year, if not more so. And that's saying something, considering last year's was the 3rd most active on record. Here's a look back. It's hard not to be awed by the sheer power. You're watching as Hurricane Ida made landfall this past year near Port Fortune, Louisiana.
The typically smooth Mississippi Sound tonight is continuously crashing up over the seawall. The surf is incredibly rough right now.
A Category 4 hurricane. It unleashed maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour.
I don't think that there could have been a worse path for this storm. It's going to have some significant impacts.
Do not let your guard down. Don't assume the worst is over.
This could create catastrophic damage in terms of storm surge and wind.
The wind has just steadily increased.
The tide has come in. Absolutely. The monster is at the door.
This monster storm carved a path of devastation wherever it went.
Windows were blown out of buildings in downtown New Orleans, and this did not even take a direct hit.
Ida arrived in New Orleans on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Here, a nurse on her way to deliver medications got stranded in the floodwater. As Ida churned inland, entire towns were stranded. Many left without power, water, or communications, some for months.
Folks here in Biloxi, Mississippi are waking up to dangerous wind and rain conditions. You guys can see the road conditions out there.
This relentless rain, we will not get a break from it. It's supposed to pour on us through tomorrow, and there are real concerns about flooding, especially tomorrow morning during high tide. As
intense as the damage was along the Gulf Coast, Ida was just getting started. The so-called remnants of the hurricane turned northeastward, plowing into the mid-Atlantic and roaring up the East Coast.
What a night. Wind whipping in Annapolis, Maryland as remnants of Ida slam the East Coast.
Just into the newsroom, the National Weather Service confirms this large tornado ripped through New Jersey as well tonight.
Remnants of Hurricane Ida left street signs, cars, even parts of businesses underwater.
I got a call and he said, "You better come down. I'm over at the gas station and water's coming up your steps."
In all, 9 states were impacted. more than 100 people killed, many due to drowning as a result of the catastrophic flooding. Hurricane Ida earned a place in the record books as one of the costliest hurricanes in American history, about $75 billion. 2 weeks after Ida, Hurricane Nicholas made landfall in Texas.
Nicholas now moving dangerously slow to the east.
A Category 1 storm, Nicholas was described as a slow-moving disaster. Advancing at about 3 miles per hour, it left more than 6 million people under flash flood watches from Texas to the Florida Panhandle. This busier-than-average season began early with Claudette in mid-June. It was considered a weak tropical storm, but don't try telling that to Guy Brooks. His home was ripped apart by one of Claudette's tornadoes, which he says came out of nowhere.
It sounded like a big whirlwind, and you could feel it, the uplift in it.
Less than an hour later, across the border in Alabama, another touched down.
I was laying in my bed and I heard the roof crumbling, and I said, "Oh Lord, here we go." And all of a sudden, I looked out and everything was gone.
Angela Spears told reporters she was sitting on her couch in her mobile home when the tornado hit.
This loud noise came and my trailer moved, and next thing I know, the walls came falling out. And I went flying out the door on the couch, and the couch right there.
These intense storms are becoming more common. New research indicates extreme Atlantic hurricane seasons are now twice as likely as they were 40 years ago, due in large part, experts say, to warming ocean water, which is fueling a significant increase in hurricane intensity and extreme rainfall. More Category 4 and 5 hurricanes made landfall in the U.S. between 2017 and 2021 than in the previous 50 years. No year produced more monster storms than 2020. It was brutal.
Oh my God! Not good. Whole thing's going. Time to take cover, time to take cover.
This has been categorized repeatedly as an unsurvivable storm surge.
The 2020 season shattered records with 30 named storms. That's the most since meteorologists began keeping track. The relentless battering caused more than $300 billion in damage. These intensifying hurricane seasons mean more people in more places will feel the wrath of these storms. Meteorologists say anyone living on coastlines, from Texas to Maine, can now expect to feel the impacts of at least one named storm each season. It's all too easy to forget about many of these hard-hit places after the winds and flooding retreat and the news crews go home. Our team returned to Big Pine Key, Florida in 2019, 2 years after Hurricane Irma hit this area. That's when we caught up with resident Bob Swakos, who told us at the time his town was still struggling to find help.
Sometimes you wonder if people really understand, if they're far away, what you're still going through down here. If you're not here, well, that's 2 years ago, they got to be all recovered.
But as our team drove this block, they could see the haunting remnants of what used to be. Kitchen floors laid out one after another where houses used to stand.
Everybody wants to move on with their lives, and yet at the same time, you kind of run up against these roadblocks.
Nowhere is the breathtaking size of these modern superstorms more visible than from space. You're looking at Hurricane Ida as it bore down on the southeast coast last year. In just 3 days, it went from a Category 1 to a Category 4 storm, feeding off those warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. As that warming trend continues across the globe, experts predict these deadly storms will only get stronger and more frequent by the season. When we return, we've assembled a team of experienced and talented meteorologists, and we'll drill into their expertise and insights on the 2022 hurricane season. Welcome back to our special broadcast, Superstorms, Hurricane Season 2022. Across the Sinclair Broadcast Group, we have an unrivaled team of meteorologists with an extraordinary amount of experience forecasting and covering hurricanes. We've brought together some of the best of them from stations across the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic so we can tap into their insights about the 2022 season. To lead the discussion, here's meteorologist James Spann from our station WBMA in Birmingham, Alabama.
Eugene, thank you very much. Let's start with Alan in Mobile. Just your basic thoughts on what will happen across the vast Atlantic basin this season, based on what we see now and the pattern that might unfold.
Yeah, I have an easy forecast. It's the one I share with the public. There are going to be hurricanes. That's the forecast. I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know how many, regardless of seasonal forecasts. So as always, we're preparing for the unknown, but we know something's going to happen somewhere. So get prepared.
Go to Ed Piotrowski. Ed, what's the use of these seasonal outlooks? What should the public do with this information?
Every year, whether we have 5 named storms or 25 named storms, we should always prepare just like any other year, because your number can come up in any year. It could be this year, it could be 50 years from now, but in the end, it only takes one hitting you to make it a really bad season.
So Zach, let's talk about this trend we're seeing of rapid intensification before landfall. That's become a problem in recent years. Talk about that and how hard that is to forecast, what a challenge that can be.
Yeah, it's a challenge for all meteorologists, from the hurricane center down to the local level like you and I, James. I think the one takeaway we need to really grab a hold of is it doesn't matter if it has a name. A lot of the storms in recent years we've seen go from tropical depression status to earning a name, with 50 miles before it makes landfall. Just because of that change of a name from a number doesn't change the impacts, and it is very important that the general public is focusing on the direct impacts to their community.
So Veronica, you flew into Hurricane Florence in 2018. Talk a little bit about that, and what did you learn from that flight?
Yeah, that was just such an emotional experience. First of all, seeing something that you knew was going to be so destructive, that I knew was going to be so destructive, but at the same time, it was just so beautiful being over that storm, eerily quiet. It took us 4 hours with the hurricane hunters to fly out over the storm, collect the data, put down some drop zones, and get back. And then following Florence inland with its tidal flooding and its river flooding, just putting all the pieces to the puzzle together, you really got a chance to see the importance of having good data and knowing that we just really need to continue to have better forecasts when it comes to hurricane tracking.
And Veronica, looking to the future, we need more real-time data from hurricanes over the water. There's some pretty cool drone technology that's ahead.
There is, and that is what I see as the future, right? There's a company out there called Saildrone that is giving us that information that we've never had before, from the ocean surface up to the bottom of the cyclone to the hurricane. And that's the information that we need. If we can't get the best data possible going into the models, then we'll never be able to have a really good spot on forecast.
Alan Seals, the Saffir-Simpson scale. Everybody wants to know what categories this hurricane. Can the Saffir-Simpson scale be misleading, and does it need to change?
Yeah, one of the misconceptions about the Saffir-Simpson scale is it tells you everything about storm surge and impact. It simply tells you the maximum wind in any part of the hurricane. The other thing that I think that throws people off is if a storm drops from, say, a Cat 3 to a Cat 2, at the minimum, we're talking a difference of 5 miles per hour. And sometimes psychologically, oh, it dropped, that's a good thing. But no, it's actually just 5 miles an hour difference. And it could be bigger or slower, which increases the impact. I think we as broadcasters should not overemphasize any one scale. And of course, the public cannot just say, okay, that's all I need to know. That past storm was a Cat blank, this one's a Cat blank, therefore, but there is no therefore.
So Ed, I think everybody understands the danger on the coast with wind and storm surge, but folks that are inland too, and folks that are off the coast inland, they have to worry about hurricanes too. They can't let down their guard this time of the year.
Absolutely not. And I know Veronica and Zach were both here in our area when Hurricane Florence came through, and 75% of the deaths attributed to Hurricane Florence, actually from inland flooding, which occurred many, many miles from the immediate coast. People die in our viewing area, and they were not on the coast at all. People do a pretty good job overall of getting away from the coast from the storm surge. And people have a tendency to fear the wind, but it really is the water they need to be concerned with. So as we move forward, especially with climate change and these storms most likely producing even more rainfall because of their slow nature, we're going to have more flood events, and people need to understand that size and strength doesn't necessarily matter. It's the forward speed of the system, and we're going to have catastrophic flooding events probably more frequently in the future.
I would encourage anybody, when it comes to a weather threat, no matter where you are in the country, to listen to the local broadcasters on TV describe what's going on. Don't just listen to people's opinions who you don't know, but trust people who have been in that market, who are trained in the science of meteorology, to really tell you what's going on.
And I'd like to ask all of you, you're all pretty seasoned meteorologists here. The one lesson that you learned when it comes to dealing with hurricanes in your career, Alan, we'll start with you.
Every single one is different, and most of the time what you expect doesn't turn out the way you expect it.
Zach, what about you?
I think the biggest thing is we need to have a greater fear of water, inland flooding or storm surge. Remember, I know everybody's always fixated on the speed of a storm, a category strength or a tropical storm, what have you, but we need to focus on the water impacts. We've had even tropical depressions that aren't really this big that have dumped 20, 30, 40 inches of rain. So it is very important.
Ed?
Every single storm is different. You can't look at history and say, oh, I went through Hugo, I went through Hazel, I went through Florence. I know exactly what to expect from this tropical system. You don't know what to expect. Every single one of those storms is different, and every one of them will have a variety of impacts, and they are never perfectly forecast. As good as technology and as good as our forecasts have come, or as far as they've come, we still got a long way to go, and no forecast is ever going to be perfect.
And Veronica, share some good wisdom with us that you've learned.
Yeah, I would say after forecasting for many, many years, the one thing that I've learned is it's okay to forecast something that's never happened before. We know that in our changing climate, we're seeing storms do things that we've never seen before. You know, the 1 in 500 year storm, the 1 in 1,000 year storm. It can happen.
And I think I'm probably the oldest here by far. I'll say this, there's a lot of things we don't know, and there's a lot of things we can't do. You learn humility in this business, and that's the one good thing about this science. We learn something new every year.
Next, we're taking you to the Gulf Coast for a front row look at what it takes to capture the destructive power of these monster storms. When it comes to documenting nature's most powerful storms, few are able to do it better than the person you're about to meet. For nearly 2 decades, Brett Adair has been going into the teeth of hurricanes, armed with his cameras and a lot of courage to provide the rest of us with an up-close look at these extreme storms. Our team caught up with him recently on the Gulf Coast. Here's Lisa Fletcher with our story.
The scariest experience for me was Hurricane Michael 2018. We got in a situation where we had to abandon our vehicle as the storm surge came in, and I'm talking winds were over 100 miles per hour outside already with debris flying through the air. We got caught in the storm surge, unfortunately.
For Brett Adair, this is just another day at the office.
The truck ended up several hundred yards away from where we parked it, and we had waves hitting the windshield. We had a boat went over top of the truck, landed on the other side of it. If we'd been in the truck, we could have drowned.
A meteorologist by training, Brett decided early on in his career that his place is in the field. He and his team cover every extreme weather event imaginable, and the extraordinary images they capture are picked up by just about every major media organization in the country. This time of year, it's about hurricanes.
From my perspective, being a field meteorologist, I'm out capturing the moments, but I'm also trying to tell the story through my lens. You want to tell it through your lens because when you've got a category 3, 4, 5 hurricane approaching the coast, I want people to get the message, get out. So I feel like that it's my duty to tell the story so that those people don't have to be here.
The story he's been watching unfold in recent hurricane seasons, he told us, is alarming.
We're going on several years of near or Category 5 strikes on the U.S. coastline. That's impressive, unprecedented, and a problem. Moral of the story is be prepared, because the probability of that happening again is definitely there.
He goes everywhere in this vehicle, a high-tech mobile weather station, outfitted with radar and lightning detection technology. He said he's had to replace his windshield some 40 times.
We've had lightning hit a telephone pole beside us and it's exploded before. So yeah, those things are, definitely in the forefront of my mind when it's like, okay, do we get out or do we not?
Brett went out in Hurricane Laura in 2020, a monster storm, considered one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit the U.S. He took us to see the remnants of a once massive home, one of thousands impacted by that storm along the Louisiana coast.
The power of the water just wiped this thing clean off. Water, wind, this is the raw power of Mother Nature, basically in an image.
No area was worse hit by Laura than the city of Lake Charles. And you guessed it, that's where Brett and his team positioned themselves.
Visibility was like nothing. It was almost like being in a snowstorm type environment, but it was liquid. You couldn't see. Visibility was almost nil. It looked like a giant roaring washing machine with anything you can imagine flying through the air.
For someone who has seen more hurricanes up close than just about anyone, we were curious what his biggest concerns are about these monster storms.
I'll be honest with you, for me, wind is intense, but water is really what worries me, because it's hard to run from flooding or storm surge, because storm surge comes up so fast. And flooding, it can surround you and kind of put you on an island, and you just got to hope you're in an elevated spot.
For anyone who finds themselves in the path of a hurricane this season, Brett Adair has some advice.
Have a backup plan. Have a plan for your backup plan.
Watch out. Yep, I got you.
The time for action is now. Everyone needs to prepare now. Have your hurricane preparedness kits ready, because all it takes is one storm to change your life.
We hope, as always, the hurricanes this season steer clear of your community. But if they don't, we want you and your family to be prepared. We urge you to download your local station's weather app so you can stay a step ahead of these storms. Across Sinclair, our weather experts will be working relentlessly to alert and protect you with the information you'll need throughout this 2022 hurricane season. Thanks for watching. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Stay safe, everyone.